Hi, I am Daniel, and the debate of what the best Toy Story film is weird, because it is very split. I would say the most common answer used to be that 3 is the best, but when Toy Story 4 came out, it continued the mostly mixed opinion on what the best one is, but most of the people who moved to Toy Story 4 group used to be 3 ones. So now 1 and 2 is probably the best in popular opinion society. Anyway, this could be a new series where we'll discuss every film in the franchise and say what's the best and worst, even though the title will spoil it. Speaking of spoilers, there'll be spoilers for all 4 of the Toy Story films in this video. Toy Story was the first CGI animated film and was intended to be based on the short Tin Toy, which is actually a good short in my opinion despite the terrifying animation. Toy Story's animation may not be the best, but it's better than that. This film has a relatively simple story, which is kind of generic and leans heavy on the idea of toys being alive, which isn't entirely a bad thing. It is the most comedy-driven film, and most of it is dialogue humour, with the characters' interactions and deliveries being on point. It isn't afraid to have a mean tone compared to a lot of things, which adds this film enjoyment a lot. Normally I would prefer dialogue to slapstick humour, but my favourite moment of this film is when Woody and Buzz go in the Pizza Planet truck, and Buzz goes in the passenger seat wearing his seatbelt without being noticed. Meanwhile, Woody is in the back and all the objects are hitting him. Everything about that scene, editing, context, and voice acting is amazing. This film doesn't really have the themes of the sequels about being forgotten or ignored and what it means to be a toy, which although I would prefer stuff like that, this is the needed groundwork. The characters are pretty good, and after the 3 songs, Strange Thing is the best, and way better than You've Got a Friend in Me. This is a great film, but it's only in Pixar's middle. Toy Story 2 was a quick sequel, but only coming out 4 years after. It does the 8 out of the 4, but it's not skippable or unimportant, because going straight from 1 to 3 will be too quick, and the fear of being forgotten will come out of nowhere. Oh, and also this film introduces new characters that appear in 3. Even with this, it's slightly weaker in the first film, but not by much. Toy Story 2 apparently had big production issues, and most of the film was made in only 9 months. Compared to other Pixar films that had complicated production histories, like Brave and the Good Dinosaur, it isn't noticeable. There is something that feels off about this, but it's not something you can figure out without knowing the history. Animation is technically good and an improvement over the first film, but the way everything is lit looks weird. This starts the trend of Woody being separated, which happened in 3.5 of these films. I say point 5 in the first film, Buzz is also separated with him. A way Toy Story 2 seems to stand out from the others is it doesn't have You Got a Friend in Me in the first 10 minutes. The song is still used twice in the film, but it still kind of gives the same vibe as Shrek the Third not starting with a storybook. I'm sorry for that comparison, but it's true. Luckily, everything else about this film is completely different to Shrek the Third because it's a good sequel. This film does a good job at having good characters both new and old. Most of the side toys from the first film have a side plot and screen time. Jesse is a good character unlike the next 2 films, mostly 3 because he barely appears in 4. And the 2 villains are pretty good, despite Stinky Pete being a weaker version of another character in Toy Story films. Toy Story 3 is the best one in my opinion, and not because the ending, which 1 and 2 fans will say to all 3 fans. Anyway, this is the youngest gap between films with 10.5 years, and it's the only one without big production issues as we know of. And yes, you count the cancel Circle 7 Toy Story 3, which you haven't heard about, I can't be bothered explaining, so look it up. I don't count it because there's no similarities between both versions of Toy Story 3. I thought that this film is trying to escape from a daycare, and I personally like prison break and heist stories where you see all the planning out and the multiple ways it goes wrong. The way the daycare is presented as both a soft and later a dark place is brilliant. The story has constant twists that aren't predictable but make a lot of sense. It also takes some of the deeper themes in the second one and massively expands it, and no, it isn't a reach out to or anything close to that. Having a few similarities doesn't make something a rip-off anyway. The animation is superb, especially compared to the previous 2. The movement and the signs are so much cleaner. Film cinematography is amazing because there are so many ambitious shots. It helps to get immersed in the universe. The characters are incredible in Toy Story 3. It does the best job of using a mixture of all the new characters out of all the sequels, and they are great. The best new character is Easy Yotso, for being the best Pixar villain by a yacht, for being threatening, having an interesting personality and backstory that fits the movie's themes, and for being proof that Disney twist villains can be good if they're revealed relatively early. I don't even dislike most of the twist villains, but still. Also, the way he betrays Buddy and the other toys again by refusing to save them is spectacular. And one of the only problems of this film is that he deserved the worst punishment. But I can see where it was going because Buddy decided to not get revenge. Even though it's not the main reason why Toy Story 3 is so great in my opinion, the ending is still superb, and the decision to give the toys to Bonnie is both unpredictable and perfect, for giving Andy a final moment before he goes to college. Shouldn't be the only reason this film is discussed, but everything else is also spectacular. People treat this ending so high that they judge for before they even watched it. It is, however, amazing at including just the Andy trilogy. Toy Story 4 was controversial when it was announced, but still pretty controversial when it first came out. But now, 1.5 years later, it is yes so. Anyway, the story is good but has a lot of problems. The main one is how a large portion of the story is characters trying to save Forky, and it barely plays with that storyline while Toy Story 3 had so much fun with escaping Sunnyside. However, it feels the most different Toy Story by a lot, despite at first glance having some common story things, like Woody being separated, and that is because the tone, as well as other things I'll discuss later. The animation has gotten better, but that's expected. Toy Story 3 is way more character driven than the other three that were already like that. Speaking of the characters, Woody is executed amazingly throughout the film. Buzz has a subpure bubbly inner voice, and while it isn't that funny in my opinion, it works in terms of contrasting to Woody's metaphorical inner voice. As for new characters, Fork is the best character in the whole series for how he's both funny and has a spectacular arc. It's a shame he only spends most of the movie interacting with Gabby, but looking at how Fork asks a question turned out, that might be a good thing. Speaking of, Gabby is a great twist on the villain for subverting the trope. Duke Kaboom, Ducky and Bunny are good comic relief characters, even though I have a problem with the last two, that I will mention in a bit. And Bo Peep, yes I'm counting her as new, she practically is presented well as a contrasting character. Something that you probably notice, the other toys from the earlier films barely do anything, and depending on your point of view, it's a good or bad thing. I can see the complaints, but looking at your animated sequels, the one I'm choosing to discuss an example of Despicable Me 3, characters from earlier films get forced subplots that take up time and could have been taken out completely with few edits needed, just to say that they've been included well. Would like to say it's a completely good thing, but it makes the ending slightly rushed. I like the concept of the way it ends, but the goodbye feels too quick. What I would do, keep in mind I'm not expert in storytelling, is 1. Make the goodbye happen while Bonnie's dead tongue to the piece and not when we're trying to open the door because that makes the time annoying. And 2. Have Woody say goodbye to everyone individually, similar to what Andy did in the last film because parallels. It could also be Bo Peep seeing them again. But instead, the only characters said goodbye to individually are Buzz, Jessie, and Forky. All yet executed well, but it needed more time. The actual final two lines, unless you count the credits, and cut to a nice sky, is actually a perfect end to the main films. The point with Ducky and Bunny that I wanted to wait until here to mention is that they wanted to go to Bonnie, but once they agreed to save Forky, it isn't mentioned again. I wish there was at least one line added about Ducky and Bunny liking being lost toys, but Woody is too important it overshadows them. Although I wouldn't go far enough to say it should be a Woody spin-off film like some people do, the film is too focused on Woody over everyone else aside from maybe Bo Peep. That was one of the reasons I was kind of overwhelmed when I first saw it. It gets way better on rewatches, so I would recommend watching it again. So I would recommend rewatching it if you're like me and only thought it was 8 out of 10-ish. Toy Story 4 has the most problems and highest highs of the whole series simultaneously, and I would say it's second best after 3. In conclusion, this is just my opinion on what I think the best Toy Story is. In terms of futures of the franchise, Pixar is making a film about who the Buzz Lightyear toys were inspired by in the Toy Story universe that is being released 2022. Looking at how Disney Plus is, there'll definitely be some more short or specials or something like that. The end.